Hello everyone, welcome to Be Live. My name is Susan Fleischman. I'm the Executive Director of Cambridge Community Television, and I have a show every week at this time called Not for Nothing, and I interview executive directors from the Cambridge area. And tonight I'm very pleased to have on Chris Messinger, who is from Mobilization for Survival, and Boston Mobilization for Survival. I want to take umbrage with that. It's really in Cambridge, but I know it's the Boston area, Mobilization for Survival. And I know that I can't stop calling it MOB. Does anybody call it MOB anymore?
We still call it MOB.
Okay. So I've known about MOB for a really long time, and they opened in 1977, or you opened in 1977, and I've always thought of it as a social justice organization, right?
Still is.
But it looks like you're focusing a lot more on youth. So let's talk a little bit about the history, and then we'll get into some of your current programs. Why don't you let me know what's going on in history?
Well, and I'd love to hear your historical perspective, because I was also founded in 1977. So I am not so familiar with all of the early days, although I've met many of the early executive directors. And when I travel around the greater Boston area, I'm constantly meeting people who are connected with Mobilization for Survival and Beyond, as it was known. It was a chapter of a larger national movement focused on reducing nuclear proliferation and also fighting for living wage jobs. And as I think the threat of nuclear war waned somewhat, the chapters nationally closed down and only Boston MOB stayed open. And at that point kind of shifted to whatever the kind of most pressing social justice issue of the day was, and has been doing that really for the last 3.5 decades. So, you know, I don't know exactly what your connection was in the early day. I'm interested to hear what were the issues that were front and center then. Well,
it was definitely nuclear issues. Like I remember the Clamshell Alliance and MOB were working together really closely on Seabrook and other nuclear facilities in the area, and definitely you know, disarmament and war issues and poverty is what I would say. So I think that the core of that is still there. And you've been really facile as things have changed and have been good at responding to new issues of social justice.
Yeah, and that, I think the issues over the decades from war in Central and South America to opposing apartheid, to working for Middle East peace, for opposing the draft. And then I think in the last 10 or 15 years, the shift has been from kind of engaging college students who are kind of becoming politicized to actually even engaging high school students who are also becoming politicized. And so the mission hasn't really changed. The population maybe has gotten a few years younger, I would say. And the core work, as I see it, that we do today is really the same, I think, as it was 20 or 30 years ago, which is one part education, so helping young people and young adults understand the social justice issues that we face. And the other half is community organizing. So if we can see these systems and what's wrong, what can we do to change them? And so we still do those two things, mostly with teenagers and college students, although occasionally we work with adult allies as well.
Well, that's a real investment in the future. I mean, I think, you know, a lot of people think that, people from my generation, think that, you know, younger people now don't care about social justice issues in the same way, or not able to, or do not consider themselves activists, or not willing to become activists. And I think that in a way what you're doing is teaching younger people how to be activists and how to really stand up for the things that are right in our society, which I commend. I think that's great to recognize that you got to get younger people involved at an early age and keep them involved. So why don't you talk a little bit about current projects, and then I do want to go back a little bit and talk about your history and how you got involved with MOB. Let's start with the current projects.
Sure. So as I said, our work is framed around social justice education, community organizing, and I think there's a third kind of wing to what we do, which I'll talk about. But the social justice education is really about supporting young people all throughout the greater Boston area to understand the major social systems that are in action today. So we look at race, class, gender, heterosexism. We run about 40 workshops a year, reach about 2,000 to 3,000 people. And the majority of those workshops are actually led by our youth leaders who actually do the facilitation. So we do training and education for them to understand how to do the facilitation and on the topics, and then they're the ones who design and lead the workshops. And we work with, in the last 2 weeks we've done workshops with a middle school group on progressive taxation, which is a really neat series of trainings I'll talk about a little bit more. But a workshop with college students about issues of race and racism. This afternoon we led a workshop on class and wealth with a high school group, and so that's kind of the range of things we do. The young people really leave with a tremendous set of skills in terms of, facilitation, curriculum design, but also a deep understanding of these social justice issues. I think in my own experience, the way I learned most deeply about these issues was when I was expected to teach them. It really forces you to understand it in a way that that when it's coming at you, you can take it in and say, oh, I get that. When you have to have someone else understand it, it really ups the level of your own knowledge. And so we have just fantastic and engaged young people who have an incredible breadth of knowledge on these topics, much more so, I would say, than the majority of adults. I mean, some of the teens in our program know a lot more about taxation than 90% of the adults in this state, and that's maybe a conservative estimate. I mean, they've really spent the time to learn about these issues. So that's one piece of our programming. I would say, folks out there who have a youth group who are interested in supporting them to think more deeply about social justice issues, we're around. Give us a ring. We'd be happy to come and do some sort of a workshop.
How do the teens get to you to become a part of this program?
So there's two ways. One is they come in through the summer. We run typically 1 or 2 summer programs. This past summer we actually ran 3. And so there's a kind of on-ramp there. Or we have a school year program which starts in mid-September and runs until May or June, and they can do that as well. Sometimes when we've gone to a community and done a training, they'll say, oh, this is really interesting, how can I get more involved? Other times it's just through the word of mouth and network. So. And
how many teens are we talking about? How many teens are in your summer program? How many teens are in your school year program?
This summer we served, I think, 70 teens in the 3 programs. Then we had an additional staff with a 4th program, and that was 60 teens. And then we did trainings for 400 teens over the course of the summer who weren't in our direct programs.
And these trainings are anywhere from brief ones to longer range ones. And do you get paid for your services? How does MOPE get its funding?
Well, we have a long history of folks that really support the work. Some folks who've been donating for years and years. So we have a really amazing group of supporters who donate on a regular basis. Again, you're welcome to join that group.
About that.
We do a little bit with grant funding. We're trying to grow a little bit in that area. We do some great work, and I think we've just under-tapped that. And there's, the Cambridge Community Foundation has been a supporter, and we're excited to partner with them. And then the third area is earned income. And so the summer program, sometimes there's a fee, sometimes there's not. And then we also do trainings, and then the Speak Up book, which we published a couple years back, also is for sale, and has sold really well. Something like 1,500 copies around the country over the last couple of years. So, so it's a great mix,
So you have no institutional support, is that?
So say more about what you mean by that.
Well, there's no income that you can count on every year that is coming from an institution you have to raise
Yes.
everything every
Yes.
year. Ooh. And what's your budget?
The budget is a little bit over $115,000, and that's when I took over 8 years ago. It was maybe a third of that. So it's been a slow and steady climb in terms of both amount of staff and volume of work, and now the budget as well is growing. So
That's great. Good for you. That's great. So you're located in Harvard Square, right?
Yes.
Near the Democracy Center?
We're in the Democracy Center. Yeah, if you're familiar with.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, so there's great public meeting space on the ground floor, and then there's 5 nonprofits on the second and third floor, and we're one of those, and kind of we're one of the founding groups to get that center off the ground.
When was that founded? Do you know?
10 years ago,
Okay,
I think.
so not that long ago.
Yeah.
Really. Oh, that's great. It sounds like you've done some really good work with increasing the budget and getting all these programs off the ground.
I like to think so.
So that's great. So let's talk a little bit about if people want to get involved. So if you're a teen, you can get involved in your after-school program
Yes.
or summer programs. If you're an adult, there are some ongoing training opportunities for adults as well.
Absolutely.
And organizing, I would imagine, organizing activities that adults could get involved with.
Yep.
And then, of course, as a donor, which if somebody wants to give you some money, how would they go about doing that?
BostonMobilization.org. There's clear donation button. Also, you could call us and say, "Here's my address. Can you send me your annual mailing?" We'd be happy to do that. Which does a nice job of detailing the work we've done for this year. And of course, you can sign up on our homepage for our email list, and we'll be happy to get you plugged in that way as well.
Right. So Speak Up was a storytelling project about racism, right?
Yeah.
And so talk a little bit more in depth about that program.
So it came out of our summer program. We asked the young people. So the program starts with education. We spend a significant amount of time talking about race, class, gender, heterosexism. And then we say to the young people, what's the issue facing your community? And so these 3 young women said, there's a lot of racism in our schools and no one's talking about it. And we said, well, what do you want to do about it? And they said, stories have been such a powerful force this summer that we actually want to gather stories from our peers, pull it together into a book, distribute the book around New England, go do trainings in schools, and then go on Oprah.
Okay. Did they
So
make it to Oprah?
They have not made it to Oprah,
Okay.
but everything else they did. And it just, I thought to myself, okay, they each have a story to tell. They'll get it distributed to their school. It'll be a win. But the stories kept coming in, and they said, we've got to organize these into chapters. And what if we had discussion questions after each story? Well, let's add some activities. And what if we had a resources section so people could take action after they've read the book? And and then they added artwork in, and so it just, it took a while, but it got there, and it's just really a fantastic resource that has won the Princeton Prize in Race Relations, and has just been really used around the country at this point. We go to conferences, and folks are kind of snapping it up everywhere. So,
when was this published?
2010, 2011.
So that might be something that in a certain period of time you might want to be updating or doing another version.
And our teens did, a year ago, they did a digital storytelling project where they talked about what it means to be an ally. And so they kind of, it was a version of Speak Up, but they said, Speak Up the Allies Project. And so kind of talking about what's the role of people who witness racism to take action. And so those stories, digital stories, are available on our website. We had some great support on that project from Harvard students as well, so it was great.
So when you say digital storytelling, that means something to me, because there's a Center for Digital Storytelling in California. Are you aware of that?
Yes.
So are these multimedia stories that are on your website? Or when you say digital, does that just mean that it's online? Or
they are video stories.
They are video.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
why aren't we showing them on our channels?
That's a great question. Let's do that.
Yeah, we definitely should. And I'm also thinking that, as you know, kids' presentation skills are really critical to
Yes.
them being able to do this work, and they should have a show on CCTV, one of these, right? We should talk about that.
Let's talk.
Okay, so that's Speak Up. Another project that you've been working on is Suburban, right?
Yes, yeah. So
What
the sub/urban justice program, the slash is there to really say that our mission is to make the connection between suburban and urban communities, and that's really what that program is about. The young people, a lot of them come from a privileged education background. Regardless of their own family circumstance, we most often work with young people who are in a school that has some decent resources, a suburban school, an exam school, CRLS, private school, the METCO program. The point of it and the kind of creation of it is myself and a couple other folks were doing this work with young people, and we kept coming across young people who said, in order to do cool social justice work, I have to come into the city, and then I go back to Brookline or Needham or Newton, and there's nothing there for me. There's no one who's doing this kind of social justice work. I need some support to take it on in my own community. So we said, okay. At the same time, we had young people who said, I am the one who has really succeeded and thrived in my immediate family or community. I'm at a private school, or I'm in, I'm the one student of color in my classes at CRLS. I need some support to deal with the privilege that's around me. How do I take action with a whole bunch of folks that don't get it? So we felt like there was a real niche of a kind of a gap in programming, which sounds unusual because it's aimed at young people who have a fair amount of resources, but they weren't able to turn those into meaningful action. And so the sub/urban justice program is really focused on how do folks who have some resources help change the systems. And we think there's both a unique and an important role for those folks. They're getting a lot of resources now. They're going to be in positions of power as adults. If they have a social justice mindset and framework, that's going to be a win. If they're actually using their resources to change the systems, then that's also going to be a win. So the slash is really, how do we come together in meaningful ways, build real relationships across difference, and also use our resources to take action. And so that's, when you are on the ground with our program, that's who we are. We're a really diverse and wide-ranging group of young people that are using every skill and bit of resource at their disposal to change the systems that cause injustice. So
that's amazing. Are you finding that a lot of these teens are coming out of families that have social justice histories, or are there a lot of kids who are like, my family's part of the problem and I need to figure out how to change this, or kind of both?
Both.
Yeah.
It really is. It's a really wide range. There's we're working with a young woman now who said, "Oh, is this actually Boston Mob?" Because my mom, when she was in college, was here in the early '80s. That story is common, and so is my family doesn't get it, and I'm here because I need a community that will help me figure out how to actually engage them. And also a lot of first and second generation immigrants. And I think my family's immigration story is far enough back that there's not so much that's been passed down about it that I know about. But from what I've seen and observed, there's a lot of young people whose parents were and are social justice minded, but there's other concerns when you're a new immigrant that may take priority. And so I think the family support is there, but so are some other challenges. So it's a wide range.
It's interesting. I'm going to make an assumption that that if you're working with gay kids, for example, who might be coming out of a place in their families that is not supportive, how do you deal with? I'm going to make an assumption that you're having to deal with a lot of personal social issues that the kids bring, and you're not, I don't know, maybe you are a psychologist, or you're helping them in a kind of political way and helping them see the world in a particular way. But do you have times when when there are needs that you can't meet, and what do you do in those circumstances?
That's a great question and a hard one to answer, and painful really, because you're spot on. We're not professionals in some of the senses that young people can use professional support. And we do what I think is a great job of meeting young people where they are, but that's such a wide range of places that we often find. So for example, we work with, as I said, a lot of first and second generation students, including some who are the first in their family to go to college. Right. And what we found is, especially if they're in a more privileged school system, they're not actually getting great college support. They're getting sort of, their grades are decent and their peers are like, I'm off to ... big name school. And they're like, great, I have similar grades, I have similar extracurriculars, why don't I go to the same school? Well, you could, but you're going to come out with $100,000 in debt, and that's a really different experience than your peers who might come out with nothing, whose family's going to absorb that. And so the counselors aren't necessarily prepared to say, look, what are your options here? And let's think ahead. Do you want to have to choose a job out of college based on, having to pay off debt? Or do you want to, follow a path that, mirrors your values? And, hopefully those things align, but speaking from the executive director chair, they don't always. So that piece, so we've developed with some support from some great outside sources, a college readiness program that we didn't have 2 years ago because we didn't realize we needed it. And so, when we can't offer the support, we ask for it and reach outside. And, there's a wide community of folks, and we don't want to be creating a program that someone else is doing really well. And these systems, as you know, are so pervasive that we're one little piece of it. But we think young people being able to understand how these systems function means that they can navigate them more effectively. And so even if in the short term it's disempowering to see how fully class is negatively impacting you because your family doesn't have a lot of money, or race is negatively impacting you because you're a young person of color, or heterosexism is negatively impacting you because you're queer or gay, et cetera, gender, absolutely. It's still, we think, useful for them to have that set of skills.
Absolutely. Well, to have that context, because when you're that age, it all feels very, very personal. And if it can be put in a broader societal context and you realize that it's not just about you, that it's about a system that's in place that you have some power to change, right, then that's a great place to put teens in, I think. Yeah. And we have a youth program here, and we have some of the same issues, especially kids going to college and then there's no support. And whether that's in a private, exclusive college, or whether it's a community college, it's very different from like going to CRLS, there's just no support. And so we're trying to figure out how to deal with our alumni as well. So good stuff. I don't want to end before we talk about your Achievement Gap project, because we've got about 3.5 more minutes, and I want to make sure we talk about that.
Sure. And I just want to add, I said we do education and organizing, and the third thing we do is build a meaningful community across difference. And I think that's the other thing that even at CRLS, and this leads into the Achievement Gap issue, even at CRLS, which is on paper incredibly diverse, you walk through the lunchroom, you walk through the classes by level, and they're incredibly segregated by race, and also to some degree by class, although that's less visible. So we give young people an opportunity to experience an actually diverse community that is supportive of each other. And it's not easy, and we're not perfect, and there's all the hiccups and challenges that you would expect that come with that, and sometimes it's beautiful beyond imagination, and sometimes it's very, very hard and painful. So again, we follow the young people. We had a couple of young people come to us and say, let's work on this issue. We had a young woman at CRLS who said, this issue I see all the time. She ended up as the rep to the school committee, and she pulled in her peers, and they said, we want to address this issue. So we went to the superintendent and got his support. The principal got his support, and ran a summer program this summer that really focused in on what they call the opportunity gap. And learned the research skills that they needed to, and then started to conduct the research. And this fall, they had a great first round of research. They didn't get all of the data that they needed. It was summertime. Their time was limited. So they're heading into this fall really ready to take action, and they've partnered with some researchers from area schools. And they're gonna find the data that they need to be able to come up with the right solutions. And involving the people who are most impacted is a core community organizing principle, and we're thrilled to support them. They're doing great work.
Well, that's fantastic because there have been years and years and years that the school department's been trying to address this.
Absolutely.
And to involve the teens in this way, I can only hope that it will really turn the whole thing around. It sounds like a great project.
I'm excited, and we certainly appreciate the support that both the principal and the superintendent, the assistant principal, the community foundation.
I bet they welcome it, though. It's like, we don't know what to do. We don't know what to do.
They're thrilled.
Help us out.
Yeah.
Help us out.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. Thank you so much. So we're going to be wrapping it up, but I want to just mention again, it's bostonmobilization.org if you're interested in learning more about MOB, Boston MOB, and if you're interested in making donations, it sounds like they could certainly use them. And if you're a teen and you're interested in getting involved because you're dealing with some of these issues yourself, whether you are looking for a community or looking for others to help you in your situations, I'm sure that you can go to bostonmob.org, bostonmobilization.org, and find out how you can get involved and how you can get more empowerment in your own community and dealing with the issues that you're dealing with. So thanks a lot to Chris Messinger for coming, and I'm really impressed, I have to say. I didn't even know all this stuff, and I certainly didn't know you were dealing with youth on this level. So I'm hoping that we can work together a lot more in the future. And I want to thank you all for watching, and next week we'll be talking about...
With the world's arsenal of nuclear weapons,